The Orioles looked great, and Zach Eflin was dominant on Monday night. And then he left the game with a shoulder issue. What could that mean for the Orioles? We'll talk about it all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Orioles fans. Today is Tuesday, April 8th, 2025, and welcome back into the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb. And coming up on today's episode, we are going to recap the Orioles' 5-1 victory over the Arizona Diamondbacks on Monday night. Get you the 5 things you need to know from that one, including a great start from Zach Eflin, a good outing, really his first good outing from Felix Bautista of the year, and Gunnar Henderson looking like his healthy self. Then we'll break down the bad news from Monday. Zach Eflin, after 6 dominant innings, leaving the game with some shoulder fatigue, what that means for the Orioles and what they would do in the rotation if he misses some time. And then finally, the O's did add an arm on Monday, trading for lefty Grant Wolfram from the Brewers. Give you the scouting report on that left-hander and how he could help the Orioles in 2025. But that's all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast, which is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $250 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So we will start today recapping an Orioles win. As I mentioned on Monday's episode, make sure to go back and check that one out, a weekend recap of the Royals series if you have not already. The West Coast games are tough for me to have an episode ready right away, but I let you know a little different circumstances with my schedule. I was going to be able to have an episode out by midday, late morning on Tuesday. So here you are. Thanks for the patience that is still going to recap the Monday show. Remember, Luke is always there with the postcast live on YouTube and in your podcast feeds. That's especially going to be big when the Orioles go on these West Coast trips and on the weekends as well. So make sure to go and check out his work on the feed too if you want that instant reaction after these West Coast games, which are tough for my schedule. But got a little bit lucky here, and we're able to get a recap the next morning for Monday. But final score on Monday night is the Orioles 5 and the Arizona Diamondbacks 1. In game 1 of a 3-game set in the desert, Orioles get to 5-6 on the season with the victory. And I'm going to get you the 5 things you need to know from this Orioles W. And the first thing you need to know is Zach Eflin was just so enjoyable to watch on Monday night. 3 starts this year and 3 quality starts for Zach Eflin. And listen, I love the version of Zach Eflin we saw at times down the stretch last year after the Orioles acquired him from the Rays at the deadline, where the O's kind of upped his strikeout stuff. And, you had 7 or 8 punch-out Zach Eflin, where the cutter was, and the sweeper and the curveball were all swing and miss pitches, and he was getting righties and lefties out. And it was kind of masterful to watch him work. But this version of Zach Eflin that we saw on Monday, and it's a version we've seen plenty of times as well, is just as fun, if not more fun. The final line from Eflin on Monday night: 6 innings of 1-run ball on 4 hits, 1 strikeout, 0 walks, no homers, 73 pitches for Eflin to get through those 6 innings. I mean, 1 strikeout, no walks in 6 innings. You do not see that a whole lot in Major League Baseball at this point, because the game has gotten strikeout heavy for both pitchers and for hitters. There are starting pitchers that walk a lot more batters. Zach Eflin is not one of them. He has walked just 1 batter in 3 starts so far this season. And that is something that Eflin prides himself on. He hates walking hitters. He throws strikes. And when he's at his best, you could argue it's not the games where he's striking out 7 or 8 batters. It's the games like Monday where his cutter is moving well. It's in the zone all day. He's keeping the timing off of hitters. He's flummoxing guys. He did throw a lot of cutters, 25 of 73 pitches, 34% cutters, but with the change and the curveball and the sinker and the sweeper and the 4-seamer, throwing them all between 13 and 7 times his numbers 2 through 6 pitches. He's just keeping D-backs hitters off balance, and he's throwing strikes, so they're swinging early in the count, and he's getting pop-ups and grounders and lazy fly balls, and he's getting early outs, which allows him to be efficient as he rolls through a game. And that is just something that you're not going to see from the highest level pitchers. And you get it because the best arms that are in Major League Baseball right now, the Orioles kind of don't have one of these arms right now. are the guys who can strike out 10, 11, 12 per night. And that is awesome. And I would love for the Orioles to have someone like that on their roster right now. But the unfortunate part is they do not. And so what do they have as an ace? They have Zach Eflin, this guy who can be so just annoying to opposing hitters and so frustrating to opposing hitters that they see this cutter in the middle of the plate and they are like, this is my pitch to hit. You swing at it and it pops up to first base, or you go off the end of the bat on a grounder to shortstop. Eflin is just the second pitcher in Major League Baseball so far this year. I get we're just under 2 weeks into the season. Just the second starter this year to throw at least 6 innings with exactly 0 walks and exactly 1 strikeout. That is Zach Eflin, and then Nick Lodolo did it back on March 29th for the Reds. Now, Eflin did hit a batter on Monday, so despite 0 walks, he did hit a batter, but actually so did Lodolo in that 1 start. But it is not something that happens a lot. You're going to see walks, you're going to see strikeouts, unless you've got Eflin out there. And to be quite honest with you, it's kind of refreshing to see a guy who can just throw a bunch of strikes. He's all over the strike zone, and you know he's going to pitch fairly deeply into games, and he might not have the ceiling. Like, I don't know if I consider Zach Eflin to have an ace ceiling. He just, to me, is a really good number 2. He's just currently the ace of this Orioles staff. They didn't bring back Burns. They didn't sign anyone else. Grayson Rodriguez is on the injured list. But this is still fun to watch as well. And I mentioned there was only 2 of these starts so far this year. If you look at all of last season, only 6 times in all of 2024 did a pitcher go at least 6 innings with 1 strikeout and 0 walks. It doesn't happen very often. And it's nice to kind of have a zag when everybody's zigging with Zach Eflin on the mound. Now, unfortunately, you're thinking, Connor, Zach Eflin, only 73 pitches. He's cruising. He had thrown a 1-2-3 6th to get through it. 73 pitches. Why was he out of the game? I know a bunch of people freaked out thinking, why is Brandon Hyde pulling him? Like, come on, people. Like, use the critical thinking skills. Brandon Hyde is not pulling a cruising Zach Eflin who's allowed 1 run on just 73 pitches through 6 innings, especially in the current state of the Orioles rotation. As soon as we saw Yennier Cano warming up in the bullpen in the top of the 7th inning, you knew something was wrong. And Cano did enter the game for Eflin at the bottom of the 7th. And we learned after the game that Eflin left with shoulder fatigue. We're going to get to that a little bit more in the next segment, but kind of a damper on what was an otherwise really good night for the Orioles. But the second thing you need to know from this win is that the bullpen, once they came in a little earlier than they expected, was great overall. A scoreless 7th from Yennier Cano, a scoreless 8th from Gregory Soto, and most importantly, a 1-2-3 9th inning for Felix Bautista. Now, once again, it was not a save situation because it was a 4-run lead in the 9th, and save situations are 3 runs or less that you are winning by. But it was just Bautista's 3rd outing of the year. The O's just hadn't found a great place to put him in a game. So the first time he pitched in a week, he pitched last Monday in the home opener against the Red Sox when he ran into some serious trouble in the 9th inning with a 5-run lead, but still was able to close out the game. He'd only pitched twice so far this season, and both of them, he'd allowed multiple base runners and looked a little rough. This one was great. 1-2-3 inning, pinpoint command. All 4 fastballs he threw were for strikes. His velo was 97-98, which is fine. The splitter looked good, wasn't spraying his pitches. And again, wasn't a save chance. But after 2 rocky outings, what we saw Monday night tells me, okay, whenever a save chance comes up, Felix Bautista looks ready for it. Even with the velo down, his stuff just plays so well that it's fine. And the Orioles are weirdly the only team in Major League Baseball so far that has not found themselves in a save opportunity in the 9th inning in any game this year. So that's another reason why Felix has only pitched 3 times in the Orioles' first 11 games. And we know they're not going to use him on back-to-back, so he will not pitch on Tuesday. But potentially, if there is a spot that comes up on Wednesday, maybe a save opportunity finally, I feel like Felix is ready after just looking healthy and good on Monday night. Third thing you need to know from this win is that the Orioles finally hit a home run again. They didn't waste any time. Ryan O'Hearn hitting 3rd in the order, actually starting in the outfield for the first time this season. Got a hanging Zach Gallen curveball, which is his best pitch, and crushed it into right field for a solo homer in the first to put the Orioles up 1-0. It was the first home run of the year for Ryan O'Hearn. And the Orioles, had just one home run in their previous 7 games coming into this one. It was the leadoff homer that Cedric Mullins hit in the Thursday game against the Red Sox. They had gone 3 consecutive games without a homer. Then Cedric hit the home run, and then 3 more games without a home run. And this is the same team that hit a franchise record 6 home runs in that opening day win over the Blue Jays. And at one point last June, the Orioles homered in 22 consecutive games, which set a new Orioles franchise record. And now this year, 2 weeks into the season, they have 2 separate streaks of 3 games without a home run. Only twice in 2024 did the Orioles go 3 consecutive games without hitting a home run. They've already did it twice in the first 11 games of 2025. So there are 2 ways to look at this. One is, wow, the Orioles offense relied a lot on power last year for it to be good. They're not hitting for power right now. That might be a little concerning. On the flip side, there were a lot of complaints about last year's offense. The Orioles rely too much on the home run. Well, while the offense has certainly been a roller coaster through 11 games this year, I would not say it, except for the opening day game, that they are relying on the home run ball. And I think in the long run, that's something that could, at least in the regular season, work out better for the Orioles to have a more diverse attack offensively. I mentioned it on Monday's show. The Orioles already have 2 games this year where they've scored 8 or more runs without hitting a home run. They did that only 5 total times last season. It's a different kind of offense, and I think the home run balls, as the weather warms up especially, and with the wall in a little bit more in left field at Oriole Park, they're going to come more and more as the season goes on. This is just too good of a hitting team with a lot of power up and down the lineup. But it's nice to see them, while they're not hitting the homers, even with hitting the solo shot, they're still winning in other ways. And that is the 4th thing you need to know from Monday, because Ryan Mountcastle made sure that that home run ball from O'Hearn wasn't the only way the Orioles were going to score runs. Mountcastle had the hit that kind of put this game away after the D-backs kind of fumbled a chance to get an inning-ending double play with the bases loaded in the 5th. Mountcastle came up, runners on 2nd and 3rd and 2 down. The Orioles were already leading 3-1 at the time. He got a 1-2 slider from Zach Eflin that was well below the knees, and Mountcastle just reached out and poked it into center field for a 2-run single, kind of broke the game open a bit to make it 5-1. If you are watching here on the Locked On Orioles YouTube page, I'm going to show you the battle between Eflin and Mountcastle. Ended up being Zach Eflin's final batter of the day before he was removed for a reliever. And you can see the chart here via Baseball Savant and StatCast. You can see pitch number 5, that slider. That was the pitch that Mountcastle hit for the 2-run single. That thing is well below the knees, like well below the knees. And per StatCast, for Mountcastle's entire career, which started back in 2020 in the major leagues, that is the 5th lowest pitch that Mountcastle has hit for a base knock in his major league career. He went down and got that breaking ball, served it into center, and came up with a huge, huge swing for the Orioles. I mean, Mountcastle has been swinging the bat really well, hitting .324 with a .791 OPS so far on the season. Also drew a walk in this game as well to go along with the 1-for-3 night and the 2-run single. And the other thing is, for Mountcastle, we talked about last year, his issue was he had the 2nd lowest pull rate in all of Major League Baseball. And Mountcastle is a guy who, to tap into his best version as a hitter, he needs to pull fly balls, and he just wasn't doing that. We've talked about how, the big wall play a factor, whatever it may be. He was at 27% pull rate last year, 2nd lowest in MLB. Right now, through 11 games, he has a 41.4% pull rate, which would be, if stretched out over a full season, the highest pull rate of his major league career. That is, besides the .324 batting average, a very positive sign for Ryan Mountcastle so far this year, because if he starts pulling the ball more and more, and the Orioles play more home games, that wall moved in a bit, the home runs are going to come back for Mountcastle, who's hitting the ball hard. His bat speed's incredible. He's looking good so far this season. And you had Adley with a base hit. Cedric Mullins' RBI ground out also came through with runners in scoring position in this game to help the Orioles get their 5 runs. And the 5th and final thing you need to know from the Orioles' 5-1 win over the Diamondbacks on Monday night is that Gunnar Henderson looked like his usual healthy self. Henderson, who started the year on the injured list, was activated on Friday, coming off that mild intercostal strain. And he did get a hit in Friday's game, and he was hitting the ball hard this weekend in Kansas City, but he finished the weekend 1-for-13 with 7 Ks. He wasn't super productive. Well, he started being productive on Monday. He did strike out in his first at-bat, but after that, he locked in. Ripped a double in the third inning at 106 off the bat, ended up scoring on an Adley Rutschman RBI single. Then ripped a single in the fifth inning at 103 off the bat to help that Orioles 3-run rally. And then in the sixth, he drew his first walk of the year and his first demonstrative walk bat flip we saw of the season, which was great. Plus, he stole 2 bases for only the 5th time in his career. Gunnar Henderson stole 2 bases in one game, hitting the ball hard, drawing walks, and feeling healthy enough to steal 2 bases in one game. That is all the signs of that side issue feeling good for Gunnar. He's mashing the baseball. He's back in this lineup. All good signs for the Orioles as they win it 5-1 on Monday. Unfortunately, it wasn't 100% good signs because, as we mentioned, Zach Eflin left the game with some shoulder fatigue. We'll talk about the latest update and what it means for the Orioles rotation coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. And I love how FanDuel makes betting so easy on the app, whether it's picking your favorite team, diving into player props, from three-pointers to steals to assists. FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. So don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. So the good news was the Orioles win. Zach Eflin pitches 6 strong innings of 1-run ball. The bad news from Monday is he could have pitched longer, but even after throwing only 73 pitches in 6 innings and cruising along, he was removed from the game. And it turned out, we learned from Brandon Hyde after the game, it was shoulder fatigue for Eflin that he felt, and he was pulled from the game. Now, Eflin said after Monday's outing that he felt optimistic about the shoulder, and Brandon Hyde did say that Eflin was going to go in for testing, so most likely some point before Tuesday's first pitch, we'll learn a further update on Eflin at worst. We'll get it at some point on Wednesday. I'll talk about it on Thursday's episode, but this is not something completely new for Eflin. He's had some injury issues in his past, especially when he was with the Phillies. They were mostly some knee problems, although he did have a quick IL stint in late August last year with the Orioles with some shoulder inflammation, so a very similar injury. He went on the IL, though, and he only spent the minimum 15 days on the injury list, and he was like completely fine and good to go. And he made his best start of the year in his first start off the IL. I think it was like September 1st in Colorado, the first day he was eligible to be activated. He came right off the injured list and looked great. So he kind of just maybe felt a little bit of soreness last year, a little inflammation, needed to shut down and was ready to go again. I think best case scenario is that. I know best case scenario in theory is he's fine, he makes his next start, or he skips one start and he's good. But you want to be cautious with these guys, especially a guy who right now is your clear and away number 1 best starting pitcher in a struggling rotation. You want to make sure you have Zach Eflin for the long haul. So if that means he has to take another 15 days off to make sure he's okay, that is completely fine with me. Now, the follow-up question is, what do the Orioles do without him? Because he's had quality starts in all 3 of his starts. He's the only Orioles starter to do that right now, get those quality starts. But the O's are kind of in luck. And again, we don't know the severity. We don't know if it's going to be an IL stint. But if it is, the O's are kind of in luck on where this falls in on the calendar. So let's do some calendar math right now. If you're watching on the Locked On Orioles YouTube channel, you can see, courtesy of MLB.com, the Orioles' kind of upcoming schedule here. As you can see there, Monday the 7th was the 5-1 win. Let's do some math because the Orioles have 3 off days. They have one this Thursday and then one Monday the 14th and one on Monday the 21st. And those off days coming up are going to really help them right here if they do need to either skip a Zach Eflin start or put him on the IL briefly. So say you do have to put Eflin on the injured list. And even if it is something like last year where he goes on the 15-day IL and as soon as his IL time is up, he's good to go. Now, if he's placed on the IL today or it happens in a couple of days, but it gets backdated to the 8th, he would be eligible to return on the 23rd. That is that Wednesday at Nats Park. So you would ask, what do the Orioles do between now and then without Eflin? But let's look at the off days, right? So you have Charlie Morton going tonight on the 8th, and then Dean Kramer going on the 9th. There's the 2 and 3 starters. Then you get the off day on Thursday the 10th. Tomoyuki Sugano goes on the Friday the 11th. Cade Povich goes on Saturday the 12th. And Zach Eflin's next scheduled start would be this Sunday at home against the Blue Jays on the 13th. Well, because of the off day Thursday and games getting pushed back because of that off day, Charlie Morton, who is starting tonight, would be on regular rest to start again on Sunday if Zach Eflin wasn't ready to go. So you could just skip Eflin's turn in the rotation. Morton could take the ball again on Sunday. Then you get the off day on Monday the 14th, and then you're back on the 15th, and you're back on your regular rotation. So you could have Dean Kramer take the ball on the 15th. He would be on regular rest. You could have Sugano take the ball on the 16th. He would pitch Friday and then Wednesday. That's 4 days off in between. That would be regular rest. You could have Povich take the ball on the 17th against the Guardians. That would be fine too. He would pitch Saturday and then Thursday. That is regular rest. And then theoretically, Eflin's spot in the rotation would come up again on Friday the 18th. But because Charlie Morton pitched on Sunday the 13th, Friday the 18th is still 4 off days in between. That would be regular rest. So you could go back to Morton again on the 18th. Now on the 19th, theoretically, it would then be the turn for Dean Kramer. But because Kramer pitched on Tuesday, you only have 3 off days, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday until Saturday. That would no longer be regular rest. So the next time the Orioles would actually need a 5th starter and theoretically need Zach Eflin would be Saturday, April 19th against the Reds. And as I mentioned, he wouldn't be eligible to come off the IL until the 23rd. So you would need 1 starter. But the nice part is, if you just call up a guy to make 1 spot start on the 19th, then you can go back to the regular rotation. Kramer on the 20th, you have another off day on the 21st. You can go Sugano on the 22nd. And then on the 23rd, you could pitch Povich. Or if Eflin was ready, he could come off and jump right back into the rotation right there. And that would all be good things. So now you're thinking, okay, maybe the O's can survive this if they only need to make 1 spot start. You could call up someone like a Cody Poteet, who the Orioles got, or Roansy Contreras, if they're stretched out enough to just kind of give you 4 innings to start off a modified bullpen day if you needed to do it. You could try to fast track Kyle Gibson to be ready on the 19th. We got some updates on Gibson earlier this week. Drew French said he is close to joining Norfolk. Remember, Gibson signed a 1-year deal with the Orioles shortly before opening day. He had been throwing on his own in the offseason. He wasn't with a team in spring training, but needed to be fully built up in game action. He threw 3 innings of live BP the other day. French said he was very close to joining Norfolk and to pitch in actual games in their rotation. So if he could make 2 starts for Norfolk between now and then, it's not completely impossible. It doesn't seem likely, but they could maybe get 5 innings of Kyle Gibson on the 19th if they needed to. But I think more than likely they would want someone who they could call up and then just could immediately option back to AAA Norfolk. And that is where I would circle the 19th, if Eflin needs to go on the IL, as the Brandon Young major league debut. Young has looked really good in his first 2 starts in AAA this year, was one of the Orioles' top pitching prospects, was added to the 40-man roster this offseason, was in big league spring training. And he was great in his second AAA start over the weekend. 5 1/3 scoreless, 8 Ks, 17 swings and misses. I mean, Young looked awesome in that start. And I think it's a great way to give him his major league debut, knowing that, hey, there's not a lot of pressure. You don't have to fill a rotation spot. If Eflin's going to eventually be okay, hey, you are just going to start this game. It's going to be a spot start on the 19th, and you're going to be sent right back to AAA. In the meantime, the Orioles could call up a reliever for the next 2 weeks to have an extra bullpen member, which would be really good as they go with a 4-man rotation. That would be nice to have an extra arm in the pen. Then you could send that person back down on the 19th to bring up Young. It's a spot start, so it's not all the stress in the world. And the Cincinnati Reds by WRC Plus have been tied for the worst offense in Major League Baseball so far this year. And the Reds are the team he would be facing at home in that Saturday game if he made his debut. So that would be something to think about as well, that the Orioles could get by if it's a quick stint for Eflin on the injury list with just a Brandon Young debut. He gets his feet wet, gets to see what the major leagues are like, gets to go back to AAA and figure out the things he needs to work on. And then hopefully you would have Eflin back. So while it would be bad if they didn't have Zach Eflin for a couple of weeks, they're in a nice part of the schedule with the off days that the Orioles could at least survive it. Now, unfortunately, you don't have some of the depth that you may have needed for an issue like this. You don't have Kyle Gibson, maybe we'll see. You don't have Chase McDermott or Trevor Rogers not pitching in AAA games yet. You don't have Albert Suarez, who was transferred to the 60-day injured list on Monday with that shoulder issue. Brandon Hyde said that Suarez is going to be out for months. He went on the IL about a week ago with that shoulder injury. They called it a right subscapularis strain. It's more depth. Who's going to be on the shelf for longer. I mean, basically, it means he can't come back until late May, and it's probably going to be beyond that Suarez is out with that shoulder issue. He was placed on the 60-day IL to make a roster move that we will talk about in a moment. Grayson Rodriguez did throw another bullpen on Sunday, but things seem to be going well, but no word on a rehab assignment, so he's not going to be ready for the 19th. And we did get at least some good news on Kyle Bradish. Drew French said that he's progressing well, had the TJ in June. He's throwing pull downs and flat grounds up to 90 miles an hour, but no timetable yet for Bradish for when he will throw off a mound. So all those guys, not options. Brandon Young seems to be the best option because, again, Albert Suarez, it would be eligible to come off the IL by the 19th, but we just learned he is not going to because he was transferred to the 60-day injured list. Some of that was because of the severity of the injury. Some of that was because the Orioles needed to clear up a 40-man roster spot. Remember, when you send a guy to the 60-day IL, it clears up a 40-man spot. And that's because the Orioles acquired a pitcher on Monday. We'll give you the scouting report on one left-handed pitcher named Grant Wolfram to finish off the show coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by Just Ingredients. When it comes to fueling your body, quality matters. That's why Just Ingredients is changing the game with clean, high-quality products designed to support better health and peak performance. Just Ingredients offers an NSF-certified line of protein powder, electrolytes, pre-workout, and creatine, all rigorously tested to ensure they're free from substances banned by major athletic organizations. Just Ingredients is also partnered with two-time MVP Bryce Harper, who trusts their NSF-certified sports line to fuel his training and recovery. And the ingredients, they're clean and they're transparent. Just Ingredients prioritizes wholesome, nourishing ingredients without all the artificial junk. And whether you're recovering from a workout, need an energy boost, they deliver real results. So visit justingredients.us and use code LOCKEDONMLB for 20% off. And for more wellness tips, follow just.ingredients on Instagram. So for the Orioles, they were able to add some pitching depth on Monday in the form of left-handed pitcher Grant Wolfram, who they added to the roster in a trade with the Milwaukee Brewers. The Orioles sent outfielder Daz Cameron and cash to the Brewers for the lefty Wolfram. Now, Cameron, who came over on waivers this offseason, was outrighted off the roster, was in AAA as outfield depth, wasn't really playing too much. He was an expendable piece for the Orioles in AAA. Wolfram, who was DFA'd by the Brewers on Monday when they made a trade for Quinn Priester, the young right-hander from the Red Sox. So the Brewers are just out of pitching. They needed a starter, and they went and got Quinn Priester, probably a little overpaid for him in that trade. But Wolfram was DFA'd, and the Orioles got him. He does have minor league options, so he was immediately optioned to AAA Norfolk. But I think we might see him at some point this year. So who is Grant Wolfram? Well, he is a 28-year-old, 6'8" left-handed pitcher. Quite a tall drink of water, who was an 18th round pick by the Texas Rangers back in the 2018 MLB draft. He pitched in the Rangers system. He made it to AAA in 2023, pitched there as a reliever in all of 2024, but never made the big leagues with Texas. And after having even his breakout year in AA in 2023 in the bullpen and then being really good last year, didn't see a clean path to the big leagues, and he elected free agency after the 2024 season without ever debuting with the Rangers. But the Brewers saw something in him, and you would think a guy like that would sign a minor league contract, but actually, Wolfram in December signed a one-year major league contract with the Milwaukee Brewers. Now, he did have minor league options, so he began the year in AAA, but he was on the 40-man roster for the first time ever and seemed to be in the Brewers' plans. And after throwing 3 innings in AAA early in the season, the Brewers called him up on Sunday, and for the first time in his career, he was on a major league roster. Unfortunately for him, he did not pitch in Sunday's game while he was sitting out there in the Milwaukee bullpen. And then the Brewers got Quinn Priester, and they needed a starter more than they needed a reliever, and they needed an open 40-man spot. So not only did they option Wolfram to AAA, they outright DFA'd him off the 40-man roster. And that is when the Orioles saw him on waivers, jumped the waiver line by offering the Brewers a player in Daz Cameron and some cash, and were able to get Wolfram in the system. Now, he hasn't made his MLB debut yet, but he has 3 option years remaining. Now, what is the stuff that he has? I want to show you. This is Wolfram's 2024 AAA pitch mix. You can see it if you're watching here on the Locked On Orioles YouTube channel. This is courtesy of Baseball Savant and StatCast. It is a 4-pitch mix for Wolfram. He mostly threw his slider last year. It's about 85 miles an hour. He threw it 49% of the time. Whiff rate of 33%. Opponents hit just 213. That was his best offering. Then he has a 4 about a third of the time. It sits around 95 miles per hour with velocity. Not a lot of big ride on that fastball, but guys had some trouble squaring it up. Just a 23% hard hit rate. Pretty good. It's kind of because of his deception. Has a big, like, over-the-top delivery, and he's 6'8", makes him really hard to square up. Then he has a couple other pitches, a curveball he throws 10% of the time, and then a sinker that he throws 9% of the time. That curveball has really good metrics on it, but didn't throw it a whole lot. Basically only would use it against righties in AAA last year, but he was mostly a 2-pitch guy, although the curveball and the sinker are definitely weapons for Wolfram to have in his back pocket. Now, for what the Orioles may want to do with him, like, he doesn't give up a lot of hard contact. He's pitched multiple innings a lot out of the bullpen, but he's been a reliever since 2022. So he's not really starter depth for this Orioles team. He is reliever depth. However, it's intriguing stuff. And listen, the Brewers, who are a pitching development factory, gave this minor league player a major league contract this offseason for a reason. And they called him up on Sunday for a reason. They figure he is a major league type bullpen piece. They just needed starting pitching so bad, they had to make a tough roster move, and that was the one they made. It's not like he was bad, and that's why they DFA'd him. The Brewers have so many starting pitching injuries right now, they just needed to find another starter, and Wolfram was the casualty of making that roster move. Now, he immediately joins AAA Norfolk as a left-handed reliever, and he immediately joins Luis Gonzalez, the veteran lefty who was also added to the 40-man roster by the Orioles this offseason, as the main left-handed reliever depth in the system. And while Gregory Soto and Keegan Aiken have both been really good to start this year, Cionel Perez, the third lefty in the O's bullpen, has been an outright disaster so far. And we've talked about that a lot on this show. Now, Perez kind of looks injured a little bit. He is still on the active roster at the moment, hasn't pitched since Friday. But I will tell you, if the Orioles either move on from Cionel Perez, or more likely with his velo down, I see an injured list stint in Perez's future. They may want to, instead of going righty heavy in the bullpen, still call up a third lefty reliever. And for a while, Luis Gonzalez was kind of that main next guy up. But now you have Wolfram, and neither guy has debuted in the big leagues, but Wolfram with just bigger stuff than Gonzalez has. He could be the guy. And I'll tell you right now, if Perez goes on the injured list soon, you could see Grant Wolfram in an Orioles uniform pretty quickly, and I'm intrigued to see what they can do with him. But it's nice to get a guy who's got minor league options, who's got good stuff from the left side. It gives them more lefty depth in the bullpen, especially with Perez having just so many struggles to begin this year out of the Oriole bullpen. But that'll do it for today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. We will be back with a show on Wednesday. It'll be coming out at the regular morning time. Unfortunately, because of the 9:40 game and my schedule, it will not have a recap of tonight's game 2 between the Orioles and the D-backs. Quick preview on that one. It is again a 9:40 first pitch on Masson 2. Charlie Morton, who looked a lot better in his second start, but still has a 9 ERA, goes for the Orioles. And Merrill Kelly, who has a 10 ERA, the veteran for the D-backs, the right-hander, takes the mound for Arizona. We'll see who can kind of get their season on the right track in game 2 of the series. Make sure to check out the Locked On Orioles postcast with Luke. He will have your instant live reaction on the YouTube page and on the podcast feed for tonight's game. I'll be back Wednesday, but with no game recap because of the late game in my schedule. Instead, I'm going to do something kind of fun on the show for Wednesday. I talk about a lot of stats on this show, a lot of advanced stats. I try to explain them as I go, but I figured let's do kind of the refresher, the guide to the stats that I talk about when discussing and evaluating Orioles players and their team as a whole. I'm going to do kind of a breakdown on the stats I use coming up on tomorrow's episode. Then I will be back on Thursday recapping game 2 and game 3, the day game in Arizona, on Wednesday to try to recap the rest of this series. And of course, on Thursday's episode, we'll also have the latest update on what is going on with Zach Eflin's shoulder. But still, we'll be back Wednesday with that episode about the stats, and then Thursday to recap the final 2 games of this series. But until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.